Today we're going deep, like scuba diving deep, so get your wetsuit on, all right? And has someone ever told you to do something and you just responded with the complete and utter opposite? Like someone tells you to calm down and you respond by getting even more agitated. I know you've seen it. Or maybe you're in business and you tell the customer who clearly needs your product to buy it and they don't. Why is that? I'll tell you in a second, and more importantly, I'll show you how this is used against you in every day to get you to watch TV, buy products, even eat food. In today's video, I'm going to show you a tendency of human nature. It's called strategic assumptions. And what makes this technique so magical is that you can't see it with your eyes. You can only feel its effects. Now, fair warning, once you're aware of this, there's no turning back, all right? You can't unsee it. And it's probably the reason a lot of the things you want don't want you back. And I'll show you how to flip the script on that. That way you're no longer pushing, but being pulled towards what you want. That way you can reject them if you want, all right, or it. In order to understand this, I want to show you something that you can do to prove this is true. Get someone and tell them to stand and face you about a few feet away. Hold your hands up, palms toward them at shoulder width. Ask them to do the same. Then place your hands against theirs and hold them there and wait a moment. And then just start pressing against their hands and notice what happens. And in virtually every instance, they will push back. In physics, they say every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You can't disprove that. And the harder you push, the harder they push back. Once this cycle begins, a mutually satisfying result is basically impossible. And now when you're playing this as a game, sure, it can be fun. When you're trying to persuade someone, it's always a disaster. This is why direct approaches rarely work. The trick is to prevent resistance from even becoming an issue. But people, we resist attempts, unwelcome attempts to persuade us. And the decision you just made to stay and watch this video is one of the best things you could have done, because in a moment I'm going to finally give you the blueprint. I've heard countless gurus on here say you have to make them think it was their idea in the first place, but they never tell you how to do it. So they can sell you what their 2,000 course is, where they don't tell you how to do it. They only try to showcase how awesome and amazing they are, and they threaten you if you refund. I'll tell you exactly what everyone else will put behind a paywall for free today in this video. So let's start with a quick experiment. When I say luxury car, those words, what brand comes to mind? If I had to guess, for a large portion of you, it's Mercedes, BMW. Why? They never told you it was luxury. You concluded it yourself. And that's exactly why you believe it. You see, through studying thousands and thousands of successful business transactions, I've identified three core principles. Direct claims create resistance, meaning if I go tell someone, this is the best funnel to use for your business, they can tell me, Mason, no it isn't. Screw off, man. They'd be wrong, but you get the point. 2, customer conclusions create conviction. If they assume that I don't lead them the wrong way, they'll naturally act in a way that supports and sustains that belief. 3, guided discovery creates loyalty, meaning I can tell them something, or I can create or put them in a situation where they come to that realization themselves I wanted them to have. This is why indirect communication and speaking to that unconscious mind, like I have been this entire video of yours, is usually way more effective and long lasting. It's because you weren't aware of the effects, which means you can't reject it. And next time you need to remember this for a sale or a situation, you will, and you'll say, thanks, Mason, in your head. Let me show you what I mean. Here's example number 1, the Apple approach. You notice how many Apple stores have no cash registers, just people with mobile devices? That's not about convenience. It's about making you assume you're not in a store at all. You're in a space where buying feels natural, not forced. Example number 2, look at Tesla. Tesla does not advertise. Instead, they create scenarios where people naturally talk about their cars. Every unusual feature, their car's dancing, becomes a conversation starter. Your friends sell Tesla for them. Why does this work so well? Well, because you aren't aware of the sales process, which means you can't reject it and you're not in control of spending. You lose the awareness. You see, this all comes down to something I figured out. Alfred Korzybski coined a phrase saying, the map is not the territory, which simply means the difference between reality and your understanding of it. The best example of this is like when I'm following that little blue line on my GPS on Apple Maps and the gray lines are the roads. Those don't accurately depict the territory or the terrain. It's symbolic, sure, it represents it, but it's not the actual road. That's not the actual route that I'm taking. You see, but it does influence your behavior, which means, here's my conclusion. If you can control the manner in which someone interprets their map of reality, you'll have a great degree of influence over controlling their behavior. Pretty cool, right? Like when magicians roll up their sleeves and say, I'm not hiding anything. They don't just say it. Like, instead of that, they just show it. They don't say, I'm not hiding anything, they just show it, leading you to make the assumption they wanted you to have. And while this is blatantly obvious when we think of it, it's rarely obvious when we see it. You've never went to a comedian, you've never went to a magician and say, oh, he's rolling up his sleeves so he can prove to me there's no... You don't do that in the moment. It's only in hindsight. Who else uses this? Comedians. And I saw this joke floating around that I've shared before that it explains it perfectly. And I'll tell you what it is. A couple of hunters are in the woods when one of them falls to the ground and he doesn't seem to be breathing. His eyes are rolled in the back of his head and the other guy whips out his cell phone and he calls 911. He gasps to the operator, my friend is dead, what can I do? The operator in a calm and soothing voice says, hey, just take it easy, I can help. First, let's make sure he's dead. There's a silence for a moment and then boom! A shot is heard. The hunter says, okay, now what? Once again, the humor is the direct result of our being led to make a false assumption and then having our mistake revealed to us. In this joke, we knew what the operator meant. We knew what she meant by first saying, let's make sure he's dead. And without ever realizing it, we assume the caller would as well. But surprise, surprise, we soon find the truth and laugh. Now, comedians are the only ones who reveal this outside of salespeople. Magicians never show their secrets. Now, what's the underlying principle in this video? Your strongest beliefs aren't what others told you. They're what you think you figured out yourself. And why is this all important to you? Because without it, your message falls on deaf ears and you are misunderstood and you lose sales you otherwise should have gotten. And I'll pick on myself for a moment as an example. People have told me, Mason, I love how blunt you are. I love how direct you are. I love how much of a straight shooter you are. And those people are usually the ones who give me the least money. And they also listen the least. Very few of them buy my most expensive stuff and execute on it. Why is this important? Well, you see, when you're too matter of fact or blunt, in my communication especially, you don't have a lot of restraint. We tell people they are important to us and expect them to feel important to us. We tell our customers, I appreciate you. And we expect them to feel appreciated. We put our best sounding information about our products on the forefront of marketing and advertising and expect customers to be impressed. Sure, this is the quickest way to get stuff off of your conscience and onto the next order of business, but we're failing to communicate effectively. They don't come away feeling important, appreciated, or impressed. They feel talked at rather than communicated with. And unless you're a doctor, there's probably not a more ineffective way to speak with impact than to rely on being direct. Yet we rely on it nonetheless. And then we wonder why we don't have much impact. How do we execute on this? Great question. If you want to maximize your impact and conserve the most energy, we have to break down communication into two categories. What we say and what the other hears. Is what we say understood by the other person? It very rarely is. Look no further than the Bible to understand. People read what it says, but they aren't hearing what it's saying. They pick and choose which lines and verses and prophets they want to follow. And in order to put this to use, I'm going to give you one of the most impactful things that has changed the way I sell and communicate. My frame of mind is, if the person I'm communicating with was already behaving in the way I wanted them to or needed them to in order to do X, how would I say this or approach it? And now, let's do a quick recap before I pull you back up to the surface. We live in a world of mental shortcuts. Every day, our minds make countless assumptions. It's how we survive. It's how we process the flood of information around us. But these mental shortcuts are a double-edged sword. They help us navigate life, yet they're also the very thing that can lead us astray. It's like your brain has an autocomplete function. You see a clean, minimalist store with high prices, your brain autocompletes premium quality. A restaurant with a long line must be good. These shortcuts aren't just convenient, they're necessary for survival in our complex world. We have to generalize. Think about it. We're not just making assumptions, we're causing others to make them too. And here's where it gets interesting. These assumptions, well, they don't feel like assumptions. They feel like facts, like truth. And that's what makes them so powerful. It's unavoidable. Every word we speak, every action we take becomes raw material for someone else's assumptions. And here's the terrifying part. We rarely know when we're assuming versus when we're knowing until after, until we're made aware we made a mistake. Or assumptions masquerade as truth in our mind, wielding incredible power precisely because we don't recognize them as assumptions at all. You see, we're all unconsciously influencing each other every moment of every day in ways we can't even comprehend. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good, it should. Because we can't opt out of this reality. We can only choose to understand it, to harness it, to be intentional about the assumptions we create in others. Is this manipulation? I'll let you decide that. So what if it is? The alternative is to remain blind to our own power, unconsciously shaping the world around us without even knowing it. And this leaves us with a choice. We can either ignore this reality and let others draw random conclusions about us, or we can understand this aspect of human nature and create environments where people naturally draw the right conclusions. You see, you can tell the world who you are, or you can let the world tell you who you are. The true horror lies closer to home. Even when we think we're being careful, even when we believe we're in control, we're constantly shaping and molding others in ways we don't even barely understand. Our unconscious influence ripples out like invisible waves, creating changes we may never see. Changes that might horrify us if we knew. We are all unwitting architects of others' realities, whether we want to be or not. And the most successful businesses and business owners aren't just aware of this, we're masters at it. We don't tell you what to think, we create experiences that lead you to the right conclusions on your own. And the conclusions people draw themselves are always more convincing than the facts they're told. So I hope you enjoyed this. Comment what you remember the most about this video, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Also, I have a special video on screen right now just for you. I want you to go watch. I promise you, you'll enjoy it.